Good morning, everybody, and happy Aloha Friday. Welcome to PSG of Mercer County. PSG, the Professional Service Group of Mercer County. We are a group that is here for you, anybody that is in any kind of career transition. It doesn't really matter why you are in a career transition right now, whether there was a reorganization at a former employer, or maybe you are making the decision to make a change in your career. You're making the decision yourself to have a career change, and then that is fine. We are here to provide all manner of resources, information, a little bit of guidance, hopefully to make you more efficient and more effective in your own job search. And in addition to being Aloha Friday, so if you are new to our group, no need to adjust your camera. I am not blurry. This is my Hawaiian shirt, my Aloha shirt. I see a few people wearing colorful shirts, so thank you for joining our Aloha Friday. And so that's what we're doing. But it is also National Cheesecake Day. And I thought that was good because, you know, when there are landings, and I don't know if there are any landings this week, but we like to celebrate. We like to celebrate with some sort of treat, and sometimes people like to bring cookies. And so maybe if you're going to be celebrating today, you can celebrate with a nice slice of cheesecake, something sweet as well. And if you do have a celebration, if you've gotten an offer or an opportunity to move forward in your career, you want to put that in chat, please do, and we can all virtually celebrate with you. And maybe we'll all have a slice of cheesecake a little bit later. To help you be more efficient and effective in your job search, we have provided, or we do have, a number of resources that could be quite helpful to you. One is we do have our LinkedIn group. And while I do hope and expect you are all on LinkedIn and have working on developing your profile, also join groups, LinkedIn groups. You can join groups that are in your area of expertise professionally, or you can join groups in areas of expertise of your clients or your target market, or you can join groups of things you're just interested in, your personal things. You'll meet lots of people virtually. We have a group, it is called PSG of Mercer County. It is all like-minded job seekers. As a matter of fact, it's a little bit of a closed group. It's not private, but when anyone joins our group or requests to join, we do put you in pending status. And I do check our attendance records to see if the person who's asking to join has either attended one of our virtual meetings or in-person meetings. And we do have attendance recorded by GoToMeeting, so I could see a name. As I see, we all see our names here. So if that matches, we let you in, or I look at our emailing list, see if you're there as well. If not, I'll just send a message out to you reminding you to let me know why you're joining the group, because what we're trying to do is just keep out the list collectors, the name collectors, the people that join groups only for their own benefit. Everyone who's a part of our LinkedIn group has been to at least one of our meetings. And so it makes the members of the group more valuable to all of us, because these are all people that understand and really kind of get the process of job search. And so it's a good opportunity when you reach out to anybody in the group, and you can, even if they're not a first-degree connection, there's a good chance that they will respond to you, where other groups that people just join for their own sake may not have done so. So consider joining, and I invite you to do so, our LinkedIn group. In addition, we have our website. It is called psgofmercercounty.org, psgofmercercounty.org. It is not just a landing site. It's not just a landing page. It is over 120 pages of content. We've built it up and honed it over time. We want to try and make it a very valuable resource for all job seekers. And of course, within our service area, which is Mercer County, and kind of our 6 border counties, that's kind of our core service area. And even if you live overseas, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, that is part of our service area because you are indeed a border county. We have an open jobs page. It's a link right on the top. And when you click on that, inside there are links to our career pages. And when you click on those, they're pre-sorted or pre-filtered by the 7 different counties, Mercer and the 6 border counties. And when you click on any one of them, let's say you click on the Mercer County page, the next page opens with up to 12 different categories, maybe financial services or not-for-profit, education. So there's 12 different ones. And you click on that, and the companies in that section, in that that job area in that county will all show up, the ones that we've been able to identify so far. Among our pages, all of our open jobs pages, we have links to over 2,600 company career pages. So we're not maintaining the list of the jobs, we're maintaining the list of the companies for you. So you can use this a couple of ways. One is you find that company you're interested in and you go right to their website's career page. So we save you a little time. And also what you can do is use it to create a targeted company list. You may not have realized there are specific not-for-profits in Mercer County or Bucks County. You may not have realized that they were there or have offices there. So you can use our pages to create a targeted company list. And once you have the targeted company list, you can look for contacts and reach out to them directly. And that could be very helpful, maybe expedite your job search as well. So please check out our website, psgofmercercounty.org. So once again, what our ground rules are, in just a moment, I will introduce Gerry. And so we all know from his biography a little bit more about him, if you haven't met him or seen one of his presentations before. And Gerry will lead an open discussion. It's really your discussion, an opportunity to ask someone who is extremely knowledgeable in the talent acquisition community. And so we will allow or encourage open mics as much as possible. So Gerry will facilitate the discussion. Turn on your mics when you do have a comment to make. For those of you that only called in, I will unmute you. Typically, I just mute the callers because sometimes there's background noise, but I'll unmute you. If I hear discussion from the callers that's not part of us, just to minimize the disruption, I may mute you. So please be attentive to that. But the rest of us, open the mic when you want to participate in discussion, and then just close your mic when you're not, just to minimize any accidental background noise. And that is what we're going to have. So I am just so happy and pleased to welcome to PSG of Mercer County, Gerry Crispin. Gerry is a lifelong student of recruiting practices. His elevator speech goes something like this: I nurture a community of talent acquisition leaders who commit to stepping up their efforts to meet the needs of every stakeholder in the hiring process, especially the candidate. Gerry co-founded Career Xroads in 1996. The Career Xroads community is 120 companies who employ more than 10,000 recruiters among them. These recruiters hire 2 million employees in most years. In 2010, he co-founded a nonprofit, the Talent Board, which gathers data from 250,000 candidates applying to several hundred companies worldwide each year. In 2017, he was among a dozen founders of another not-for-profit, ATAP, the Association of Talent Acquisition Professionals, which has 1,000 members, a global reach, and lobbies for new standards for recruiting behavior. Gerry has strong opinions about how job searching will change in the next few years. He's also interested in seeing in what you see happening and how you are helping to change the job landscape. So PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome one of the most nurturing lifelong students I know, Gerry Crispin.
Cool. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. I enjoy being here. John and a couple others, I recognize your faces, and I've been in other groups as well. I try to be as accessible as I can in relation to that, although I have to say I am not a coach. I don't do it part-time. I really don't get involved in anything other than what is going on the recruiting side for employers for the most part. But because of that, I have access to literally thousands of recruiters, not only in the United States, but across the world. And I'm very curious about how we hire people and how we treat people who we hire, and then how we treat them when they obviously are hired. So this has been a fascination for me my entire adult life. So for those of you who don't know, I'm like 74 years old. I've been in recruiting in one way or another for 50 years. The companies that are members pay me a stupid amount of money to be a member of Career Xroads. And I'm always amazed that they continue to renew. So it's hard for me to leave the space, but I think, playing golf every day would be pretty boring. So I'm still very active. And one thing I would tell you about myself before we kind of get started is, in order for me to continue to be as engaged as I am, I take a group of human resource professionals, typically heads of TA, heads of HR, to a different country every year. So I lead a delegation that goes to different countries. India, China, Brazil, Argentina. The last one we went to was Singapore. 5-6 years ago, we went to Cuba. We were the first HR delegation to Cuba in 60 years. Met with fascinating folks. And in each country, we meet with the government to try to better understand how they incentivize work. We try to meet with university professors and their students to better understand what their aspirations are and what they're trying to teach people around business. We also, meet with employers. We meet with a whole variety of folks. I'm leading a delegation once again in November, probably about 20 people, to Israel to do pretty much the same kinds of things. And I tell you that I am fascinated because recruiting in every one of those countries is so different than it is here in the United States from a cultural point of view, that I'm always learning something new. And, one of my fantasies is I'll have the time to write a little bit about my journey over the last 20 years doing that. But I've been active for the last 20 years looking at the evolution of recruiting. And there are a number of things that are pretty obvious to me. And one of the things I will do before I'm done is, the few people that I do spend time telling them how to get a job, I will tell you I tell you what I tell them before we're done over the next 45 minutes to an hour. So one of the things I'd like to ask everyone, and you can do this by raising your hand so I can see what that kind of looks like here, is how many of you, when you search for jobs on the various places that you search for jobs, and we can talk about that, how many of you are still restricting, or let me say it the other way, how many of you are not restricting the geography to, for example, Mercer County or New Jersey, or I don't know, if you're near one place or another, but instead expanding that geography, either by searching against several different geographies that are significantly further than where you live and can commute to. So I'd like to know if you've expanded geography significantly. I'd like to see your hand. And of course, there's a whole bunch of people who aren't showing themselves for one reason or another. And I can't tell whether you're raising your hand, but there's obviously a few of you that are doing that. And I have to tell you, that is a critical shift that has to take place really for every job seeker, either in looking at gig work or looking at full-time work. Increasingly, corporations are either doing it on their own because they recognize it's important, or they're being forced to by their employees, who are basically saying, I no longer want to work 9 to 5 every single day. And for those jobs that are typically office jobs versus customer facing in person, fundamentally, corporations are being forced to move to a much more agile approach to where work is and how it's done, and getting more focused in on what needs to be done in order for us as a company to be successful. More and more companies are increasing the training of managers and their teams to be able to have a collaborative conversation around what I need, because I'm blending more work in my job, with ideas about where I want to be long term in my career, with what's going on in my life. And that kind of capability is really being demanded more and more by employees, who basically are saying to their employers, you can determine what the outcome or output should be, but I want to have much more of a say in where that work and when that work takes place. And you should be thinking about that in terms of the kinds of questions you ask when you do get up to bat, as to where the company is in making that choice. There are some companies that clearly have said, hey, if you want New York salaries, you got to go to New York every day and sit in our very expensive offices, because we've got a 10-year contract and we can't get out of it, so we're going to use it, by God. And I say to those companies, you are losing employees just in saying that. Apple basically said, we said everybody could work from anywhere they want, but now we're recanting that. Everybody's going to have to come back by September. And hundreds, if not thousands, of recruiters began descending on Apple's employees to see what they could steal. And the reality is they're very successful in doing it. So I just want to be clear that there has been a major shift in how employees think about what they want in a workplace, and you should be taking advantage of that when you are looking for a job by expanding your geographic reach. And for those of you who might be more mature in age and having aspirations that you're going to move out of a high tax area like New Jersey into a low tax area somewhere else, maybe you could do it even sooner. I'm sure the New Jersey government's not going to be happy about that, but they're going to have to find incentives to keep you as well. Any thoughts about that? Anything that anybody has been doing to make an effort to identify which companies' policies are, more amenable to themselves and their values, and finding some success in reaching out beyond Mercer, beyond New York, beyond Philadelphia, and perhaps to other states? I'd be curious as to any experiences out there. Anybody want to speak up on that?
I'll venture to say that the relocation costs are still a concern, and I don't think that organizations are as willing as before to front this cost. I was in an advanced stage in an opportunity in Texas, and they came back to me. They said, well, you live in Maryland and the opportunity in Texas, how about you work in our satellite office in Hagerstown, Maryland? Now, that office is an hour and a half from where I live. So it will be a grueling commute. And then they say, well, then you have to come to the office maybe only twice a week. But ultimately, it didn't work. But before, the way I come to be in this area is that I was hired in Chicago, and the company moved me here. Now they are more, okay, you move yourself, and then we provide the job. That's what I wanted to share.
I think it's a good one. I think you're going to find companies in all different places. The key is obviously learning as quickly as possible how open they are, or how restrictive they are in relation to making the choice for you. So there's certainly a lot of companies that have basically said, okay, we want you in the office 3 days a week, and then 2 days a week you can continue to work remotely or work from home, that kind of thing. As opposed to giving the manager and the employees the ability to have conversations about how you go about doing that. And I'm convinced that in the next year or so, you're going to see way more companies becoming much more flexible as they begin to lose employees who fundamentally want that flexibility. And so that's going to drive, I think, some changes. But explore it now, because you may just be able to find just the right thing for yourself. Any other thoughts?
Gerry, my wife works for a city, and before COVID, they were looking at, and I think she was going to work 2 days a week out of 5. And I think, to be frank with you, I just landed, and they're going to require, as far as I know, me to head to the office 5 days a week. I was in a rather lengthy job search, so I took that job. But I think, to your point, I think we're going to see it's from both sides. I think workers are going to say, hey, you know, I experienced work from home and I really like it. And I think from the employer perspective, particularly in New York and, you know, maybe some places in New Jersey that are expensive, like Hoboken, they may say, why are we paying brick and mortar? And so I think it's really coming from both sides. But yeah, I think we're in a paradigm shift.
Well, it's just something that you should be cognizant of, because it's going to, the companies that have not made any choices about the policy for the future are the ones that you want to be most careful of in accepting an offer without a better understanding of what's going on, because it may be pretty onerous. And then obviously your interest in staying there won't be that high. Eventually they'll learn from you that they need to shift and change, but it is coming at us pretty quickly. John mentioned when we first got together a few minutes ago, some information about, or asked a couple things about job boards. And so I thought I would raise that. Where the idea is, where are you sourcing opportunities? And for many of you, I'm sure that job boards become a critical part of that look. Obviously, you want to network, and we'll talk about some of those kinds of issues relative to it. But in terms of being able to look at the most jobs that might fit the framework, the universe that you are looking at, is there a way to avoid going to 50,000 job boards? And believe me, there are 50,000 job boards out there, at least. So there are 4 that I would suggest have the most value for you, and should definitely, all 4 of those should be the primary approach, secondary becoming other ones that might have unique specialty kinds of things, or something that you see in an area like a forum for your professional association or something to that effect. But the fact of the matter is, there are 4 that I think cover about 80% of what's going on out there, if not more. One of them is obviously Indeed. It is the 800-pound gorilla in the room right now. A second one is ZipRecruiter. And by the way, 20 years ago, Monster was sued by the US government as a monopoly, controlling all the jobs in the United States. Now that was BS, but you can see that Indeed and or ZipRecruiter or whatever may or may not be as valuable to you a year from now or 2 years from now. So, but today, I don't think you can avoid checking them out. They aggregate and charge for employers for posting in ways that make really interesting sense, and I'll mention one other things with that. A third is LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a preference for so many recruiters in the United States who, by and large, would just like to be in one place. They don't have to deal with all the other stuff coming through. And so that's where they are, that's where they look. And hopefully in your group, you periodically have someone either from LinkedIn or who is an expert on the use of LinkedIn that can help you not only engage LinkedIn, not only as a job board, but in the groups that you want to be able to deal with, how you profile and pimp yourself out in relation to your LinkedIn profile, etc. All of those things I think are important so that you can be found by recruiters who are searching for folks like you. And there's a lot of little technique around that that should be almost an entire hour in terms of conversation, because I think a lot of people need to improve in that area. So that's the third. And the fourth is Google. A lot of people don't realize that Google is in fact a job board. It's also free to employers. And so employers spend time helping Google connect and scrape all of the jobs that exist on those employers' websites into Google.
Here's what I found.
Whoops. My cell phone is next to me, and the moment I said Google, it started to talk to me. So I'm sorry about that. Google is fascinating because they are increasingly looking at ways that they can dominate in this field. And they've had a lot of false starts over the last year, 2 years that haven't worked well with employers. But more and more employers are discovering that their biggest yield is coming from job seekers who find a job on Google that connects them directly into the corporate site to apply.
So Gerry,
yeah,
when you mean Google, you mean doing basically a Google search using,
yes.
Okay.
Yes. If you went on Google search and used your skills, whether you have advanced skills in Boolean or whatever, to look for a job with your geography engaged, your combination of geography, combination of specialty, combination of experience, etc. If you know how to, and the more you learn how to use the search capabilities of Google, the more refined you're going to get. But what comes back will be a very strong set of quality jobs in relation to that. Now, there's one problem though. Many of those jobs are embedded in job boards. So if you click on it, you end up at the job board, and the job board asks you to fill out kind of an application or profile, and only then will they send you to the job itself, which means that you have to fill out a damn application again, which is a pain in the ass. And Google announced yesterday that when they give you a result of the jobs that are available, that they know about on Google, starting October 1st, it will tell you whether it's to a pain in the ass place that's going to ask you for more information about yourself before they share the information about the job, or not. And it will give you the ability to bypass, if you will, some of the duplication that exists out there. And that's got all the job boards up in arms about what's going on with this. So, and that was just yesterday that came out. But I will tell you that a lot of very large firms that are now measuring the effectiveness of sources are finding that the ROI for their investment in getting information to Google far outweighs any other source for many jobs, not all, obviously. If you talk about executives, if you talk about high specialties in tech and a variety of other kinds of things, there's clearly other options that are out there that people use and that have strong effectiveness in terms of that. So that's a key issue, in my opinion. And those 4 job boards really have some significant value to be on your list as primary if you want to check into some of those. I'd be curious, though, for the experience in this room, what other job boards have you used that provide you with something that, you know, appears to be a good lead that you can follow up?
Go ahead, Michael.
I just have a question. I mean, I'm familiar with Indeed and all the other things that Gerry mentioned, but in terms of using Google search for jobs, is it just going to the Google search bar and putting in the name of the company you want, or is there some other, method to that?
It's primarily your ability to search Google. Now, there are many levels for that. So you can easily go to Google and put in, I'd like to see engineering jobs in New Jersey, and you'll get something back. But for those of you who either look up and learn how to use Boolean search terms in terms of searching Google, that could be a master class that would be useful, I think, for PSG if you haven't already had it.
So I did put a link
for you, Michael, but the answer is yes. It's as simple as going to Google and experimenting with what you do. The fact is, most of you have done that, but very often you then settle on going to several different job boards, and now you bypass Google, if you will, and are going to those job boards specifically because that's what they want you to do. And the job boards will send you an alert and all of those kinds of things. So you don't want to ignore that, but I'm just saying Google has a better approach to scraping more jobs and organizing that information in a way that's useful, and has continued to improve on that to a point that more and more companies are finding that their best yield for hiring is coming from Google from a cost point of view. Just saying. You want to go where the employers. You want to go where the employers are going.
Yeah, go ahead, Maria.
Oh, oddly enough, I was contacted by a recruiter who found my resume on Monster. I didn't even think Monster was in existence, but she did. And thankfully, when I first, went into transition at the end of January, I updated my resume because I forgot all about Monster. So yeah, Monster, I guess, is still being used by some recruiters. And then naturally I use, because I'm in HR, I use SHRM, I use iHireHR.com, those types specific to HR. But they're not as great as Indeed.
And I will tell you that Monster has, one of the reasons why it survived, it's now part of a company called Randstad. And Randstad is an RPO, which means that they are the recruiting organization supporting hundreds of companies. And so all Randstad recruiters will use Monster just as a natural force because it's on their desktop. So that's one thing. The second thing is Monster has very long-term contracts with the federal government. So there's a huge number of government-related jobs that are on Monster that you might not find in other places.
That makes sense because the company that interviewed me was technology.
Got it. Yeah, and there are these niche sites everywhere. So, you know, it's not that you want to ignore them, but you know, how you want to use your time as best you can. The point is there are a few sites that should be your primary sites. The remainder are kind of ancillary. You might want to experiment or spend so much time, you know, experimenting, but you don't want to kill yourself because obviously you should be spending more time networking to get into those companies, right? So that's a key issue. And let me talk about that next. But unless there's anything else anybody wants to add to the job board issue.
Yeah, Gary, I don't know, David, how to raise your hand. I don't see the sign.
There's no
This is
sign to speak. Yeah.
Okay.
And Dominic,
Sorry,
you're
David.
not coming through, Dominic. I'm sorry.
This is Amit Ray. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Amit.
Okay. Okay, Gary. So I know you talked about the general boards, but I do browse around, and obviously there are some targeted sites like the USA Jobs for Government, right? That's very useful. Or if you're in also looking in teaching, which I am, Higher Ed Jobs is a very good site. Just wanted to add to answer your question.
There's another one that I happen to like because a lot of employers are connected to it is a site called Direct Employers. I'm not quite sure if you go to their website, you'll find the connection to their job boards, but basically they also scrape from their members and they have about 1,200 companies, all of the jobs that exist out there. It's just something to be of interest. I know that most of you are listen to and engage in, you know, an approach to networking that I think is crucial and important, not just for finding a job, but actually for how you succeed at work. I think increasingly people should realize that networking isn't something you begin doing when you're looking for a job. Too many people have to begin networking because they weren't doing it when they were working. And so I want to emphasize that increasingly your ability to build a solid professional network is crucial to your success in your next job. And if you do not have that, that's going to be a problem, not only for you in succeeding in the job, but it'll be an increasing problem when you then look for your next job because you have to start all over again networking. Networking should be a fundamental competency that you do every day. It's as essential as breathing. And fundamentally, you learn then how much time and energy should be spent at it and how focused you should be in engaging people who are connected to you via, you know, professional interests, professional aspirations, etc., both in and outside of work. I think it's that crucial. And obviously it's a fundamental thing that I think this group talks about in an ongoing way. But I want to focus in on one other piece of that. And that is when you are trying to network in relation to a specific job that you've seen. So if you are searching for jobs on the web and you found a couple in key companies, before you even apply for that job, you should be going to LinkedIn perhaps and looking up that company and perhaps a company that you once worked for or currently work for, and seeing who in the company that you work for is in that company. If you have a college degree and you put your college in to find how many people in that target company graduated from the college you graduated from, you should be able to find people who right now is not part of your network, but in the next few minutes should be.
Yes.
And if you do something as simple as saying to someone on LinkedIn, hi, I see that you graduated from XYZ University where I was. We weren't there at the same time, but we had similar programs. I'm targeting your company as a potential place for my next job. I found a job there. I'm fascinated by it. And I wanted to know if culturally it has these kinds of values. It seems to, from what my research is doing, but I wanted your opinion as a fellow graduate of XYZ University. Something to that effect. And you know what? 9 out of 10 are going to respond.
Yeah.
And when they respond, you say, thank you. I really appreciate that. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to just check in before I applied. When I apply, I would love it if you would be my employee referral. And tell me about your employee referral program. Is that something where you have to put some information in, or I put your name in, or what?
Yeah.
So that might seem like a lot of work. It's not.
Well, you're making them an advocate for you.
You are making them an advocate, but here's how it actually works. In the database where your application and resume reside are another 100 applications by folks who are interested in that job. The recruiter or the hiring manager who is looking at all of this pool of candidates sees 100 lines in front of them. 100 lines. It goes below the fold. They have to scroll down the 100, whatever. Do you think they open every one of them? Not a chance. Not a chance. They're going to refine their search to reduce that, except for one thing. As they scroll down, off to the side, there's a little red check mark, which suggests that that person has indicated they're coming in as a referral from an employee. Every single one of those check marks gets opened. Might get closed because they may not think you fit, but it will be opened. Now, what does that mean? What it means is if I'm going to narrow 100 people down to 10, 5 to 10 that the hiring manager will look at, I can assure you that at least half of those who were referred are going to be on that list. And on average, for any given job, there are only about 4 or 5 people who are referred by employees, but they will be looked at by the recruiter and by the hiring manager. And of the 5 finalists, 2 will have been referred. Now, there's no such thing as average, so this is not true for every single job. Obviously, you all get that. But in its aggregate, that is the power of having somebody who refers you who's inside the company in our society, in the United States. It's not the same in other countries. In China, for example, I don't refer people because if I refer someone and they're not hired, I lose face. My family loses face. And as a result, I may have to quit my job because my company didn't hire you. Well, that's bullshit, but that's bullshit for our society, but not for China. So fundamentally in our society, we like to refer others because there's incentives in our organization that promote referrals. So it's something that even some companies decide that there are super referrals within companies, and they automatically interview anybody who is referred by that individual. So you need to be able to go out and get your own referrals, as opposed to waiting for some employee who supposedly knows you to come after you. You can create that referral connection. And what it does is it increases your ability to get up to bat in a slate of candidates by nearly 100%. I mean, it's a 5 to 10 time supporter for getting there. So the investment of time in creating a referral for yourself inside the company is going to be critical. And that does not mean, and this is the question I'm always asked, it does not mean you know that person. It means you and that person have some affinity, went to the same school, went to have the same professional association, used to work in the same company. You're all in Mercer County. Whatever you can do, I got to tell you, that's what you need to do to enhance your ability to get up to bat. And I will tell you, it is by far better than any other thing that you can do. So, spend time doing it. I don't know if anybody has any experience either referring others and or being referred and having that be successful or not. But I'd like to make sure that this point is heard, because I think it's a critical point for everyone networking for a job. But I think it's more important once you get the job to continue networking professionally.
Excuse me, Gerry.
Hi, Gerry.
Oh, go ahead, Maria.
Yeah,
I
no, I was
want
just
to
going
let
to
Gerry know
say,
there are a couple of questions in chat, but go ahead, Maria.
okay. You're absolutely right, Gerry. Having been on both sides of the table as an HR executive that has reviewed thousands of resumes, yeah, the referrals come to the top. They just do. And even myself, when I apply for a job, I always do the research first before I apply. And if I find someone that can refer me, I am called. I may not get the job, but at least I am called. So you're right.
Cool. Any others?
So, Gerry, there's a question in chat from Craig. It's from an earlier discussion point. I do not want to move out of New Jersey, and for my work, I would need to be in the office sometimes. How do you apply when relocation would be required?
My opinion only on that is I would look deep in your own value position and think about what could actually convince me to move. And it might be absolutely nothing and you really want to scream that at the top of your lungs, or you might find that there are some things that might move you in terms of the challenge, the money, the whatever, and in that case, you're not 100% against relocating. So I would apply. And if I were engaged to go further, and asked about my willingness to relocate, I would honestly say it would depend on a number of things, but I certainly would not want to relocate at this time. That I would work remotely and travel in for periods of time as needed over at least 6 months to a year, and then be willing to reevaluate my situation. So if you want me, you can have me, and 6 months, a year from now, let's talk about what relocation involves, et cetera, et cetera. Now, 6 months, a year from now, maybe you've gone in a few times for a few days or a week or whatever it might be, and this issue comes up, and my response to that is, how's my performance? Outstanding, really? So I'm providing outstanding performance without needing to be there from a relocation point of view. I think we should continue doing that. And I would push it as far as I possibly could. And then, if push comes to shove, you've got to make a decision about relocating or not. And yeah, you might be back in the market again. The point is, I want to work for a company that has certain characteristics and certain values, that a job that has certain things to it, and for people that have my back and allow me to do the things I want to do. So if I find a company like that who's willing to hire me but has a preference for relocation, I still want to work for that company, and I'm going to look at it as potentially gig work for 6 months or a year. Nothing wrong with that. There's an awful lot of people that are going into full-time jobs and they never last more than a year. So, why not? So that's my response to that. It's a very personal approach. And I know many of my friends in human resources and talent acquisition who have done that. Several had to find a new job after a year or so, and several continue to be remote because the company has caught up with them and their values, and they don't want to lose them. There are fewer people, or percentage-wise in this country, there are fewer people working, and that's going to continue. We were almost 70% of the working age population worked in 1970. It's down to, or 1985, something in that order. Today, it's down to 62% and expected to go to 55% of the working age population. And the point is, people are opting out of work in very large numbers. That's again a whole different conversation, but employers recognize this and are much more attuned to retention issues than they've ever been, and that will continue to grow.
Thank you. And during an earlier discussion, you mentioned, I guess, the acronym RPO, and Sam asked, what does RPO stand for?
Recruitment process outsourcing. So it's basically, Maria, who might, as an HR executive, has a choice. Do I hire a bunch of recruiters inside the company to manage the recruiting? Do I just, every time I need somebody, I go to a third-party agency, and that's probably the most expensive thing. It also means that you don't have consistent representation in terms of who you are. Or do you hire an outside company like you might for security that does all of this for you, spends time with you so that they learn what's going on, but they're responsible for all of the hires, and most of the recruiters in that RPO company will have an email that is the company email. So they'll be literally representing themselves as your company, but they're being paid by another company, another organization. And that has its pluses and minuses. Most large companies use that only in specialized areas, but a small company that has, let's say, I don't know, 500 people, 600 people, hiring maybe 100 people or so a year, for them to hire recruiters and buy in the technology and all of that kind of stuff may be more costly than, in effect, leasing a workforce to do the recruiting for you. So RPO is becoming a bigger force in our country, and most of you as job seekers would not necessarily know if that person you're talking to is in fact paid by your company directly or not. And that's important. And maybe I'll chat about that next, but that's what an RPO is.
Thank you. And one of your early points, you listed your 4 preferred job boards. You asked us what others may be using. Mike responded he uses the ladders. And
good point.
So
the ladders is not a huge job board by any means. Highly specialized. As a job seeker, you get to pay for them sort of curating jobs that they find for you. So there's someone or some algorithm, a little combination of both, because a human does in fact look at what goes out to you before it goes out to you. But for the most part, it's done with an automated algorithm that searches all of the job boards and other places that they have for jobs that uniquely fit the profile that you've given them. And obviously it has some strengths and some weaknesses about doing that. Typically, they're trying to do this for people who would be looking for jobs over $100,000, typically. One of the interesting features of this, though, is once you pay for membership, ladders will take a look at and improve your resume for free or no additional cost. And they'll provide ideas about how to improve your LinkedIn profile as well for free. So it's an interesting model. It's the only one in the United States where they're charging the job seeker for membership to get jobs, but it's not that expensive. And if it's a couple $100, I think, and if you try it, worst case is you're not going to get your couple $100 back. So there's that's the ladders from my perspective.
David, can you hear me? I want to ask.
Yes, Tom, I can hear you, but speak up because your volume is low.
All right, hold on. Let me raise
or move the mic closer to your mouth.
It's pretty close. I'll raise the volume. Sorry. Hey, Gerry, great presentation from you. Just on the whole job board issue, I just dropped myself off of, the whole thing. Indeed, Career Builder, Dice, etc., because I was getting all these third-party recruiters calling me. If anybody has seen all of my emails that I send out to the CIT group, Breakfast Club, etc., they're coming from third-party recruiters for the most part. What I have noticed, and I would recommend highly to people, LinkedIn has greatly improved their pages for jobs. So it's very simplified. It's very easy to copy and paste into a Word document and save. I save all my jobs as an electronic folder. And they have dropped the concept of this is the recruiter to speak to at the company, and here are the key points. They've dropped all that. It's very easy to apply. And noticeably, one thing I saw, there's no option to include a letter. So the whole conversation about do you need a letter and a resume, etc., seems to be gone out of LinkedIn. And the one thing that I'm doing, I'm looking for 100% remote jobs. I went in there, product marketing manager, right? So I want product marketing manager. I put product marketing manager hyphen remote, and the location I put remote. I hit punch, enter, 39,000 jobs popped up. And what I like about that, I'm dealing directly with the company at that point for probably 98% of the jobs versus what you're talking about, Gerry, a third-party recruiter who maybe works for the company, et cetera. I've seen those. But what I really like is I'm now dealing directly with the company. And also, beside networking, and I have a hard time with that. A lot of people don't respond to me when I ask for help, when I did. But I pay the fee. I'm a paid member of LinkedIn. I get to use InMail. I had 2 interviews in June. One of them, I sent an InMail to the HR rep for the company. The other one, they just liked my resume. However, in both cases, well, definitely in one, they wanted somebody in the office in New York City. That wasn't going to happen. I live way down in South Jersey by Lakehurst Naval Air Station, so that wasn't happening. The second one, I still think that was a factor because they wanted, I think they wanted somebody in the office at Princeton. And I still, you know, your feedback, I don't know. I see a lot of jobs that have a location with an office. I understand your point. There's a lot of pushback from employees like me who want to work at home or maybe do a hybrid, but I still say the number's about 80% of jobs, they want a location, they want you in the office, they want you in the seat, and 20% maybe some form of hybrid or remote. That's my take.
Yeah, and that's a good take. 2 things. One, let me, because you sparked 2 things for me. One is I do want to share one idea, so I'm going to do that in a minute. But the other piece is third-party placement agencies are very often staffed with one of 2 types. Folks who will not be there in the next 3 to 6 months. Turnover is huge. And folks who have been there forever. That's how they make a living, and they do it ethically and do it very well. It's extremely hard for you to tell the difference between them. And I've always encouraged job seekers to ask the question, how do you represent this company? How do you represent this company? And if you can, prove it to me. How often have you placed people in this company if in fact you're a third-party recruiter and don't actually work for that company? I think that's increasingly important, and I will tell you why. This occurs mostly in very large companies, because small companies will very often use a third-party recruiter for any number of different jobs because they don't have the resources internally to be able to recruit. But large companies tend to. So for example, a company like Amazon has over 3,500 internal recruiters. They don't use third parties, not barely ever. And that would be highly, I mean, crypto, whatever. They would not be using that. Not only that, but their system, if you ever were put into a job that you didn't get at that company, there's a tag on your profile and your application that says that you were put there by a third-party recruiter, which means that if they consider you for any other job over the next 6 months to a year, they're going to have to pay that recruiter, which means that they're not going to be paying attention to you. It's as close to blackballing as possible. So fundamentally, I've always, and certainly in my younger years when I did in fact look at recruiters, I would talk to them. I want to know how long they've been in the business. I want to know how many people that have been placed in that company, and I want to have a contract with them that says they are only positioning me in that company for that job, period. No other reason. So this is a much longer discussion, but I do think it's important to understand what great work some third-party recruiters can do for you, but they're not working for you. They are working for the company that pays them. And you need to always keep that in mind, always, for that. And the other thing I wanted to make sure we talked about before we end is this. I occasionally spend time with folks who are struggling to find a job and get the job that they want. And I tell them I do have an approach that I think, for as long as I've seen people do it, literally guarantees work within 6 months. So you need a longer time frame to think. That's not to say you wouldn't find a job other ways sooner. And essentially it's this. One is have the discipline to identify at least 25 to 50 companies that you want to work for and know why. It may be size, reputation, what you've heard, people that you know there, any number of different kinds of things, but having that list, in my opinion, is important. I would then go to LinkedIn and using, again, a little bit of search tools like Boolean, etc., but the search tools that are available on LinkedIn for you, to try to identify the person or the job title that is most likely to be the person who has the final say in hiring you. It might be a hiring manager, but it might be the hiring manager's boss. So the director of finance in a particular area. So if I can search against a title like that in the company, I might come up with individuals. And if you've got 25 to 50 companies you're targeting, you're going to find at least 20 of them, maybe 30, but let's take 20 of them. And you send the 20 of them a note in asking them to connect to you. But basically you're saying to them, I understand, I admire your company. So you're saying that. I am going to be writing an article for publication about our field and your expertise around this issue, and it should be an issue that is interesting and important and part of the future of what's going to happen to be successful in that kind of industry and or work. So in human resources, it might be, I want to write an article about retention and the increasing importance of matching talent management and talent acquisition and developing better quality strategies around retention. That'd be cool. Maria, if she were working in a job, she'd go, oh, that's interesting. And you think I'm an expert. I'm flattered. Thank you. Of course, I'd be willing to spend 15, 20 minutes being interviewed by you for that article. And of course, you're going to give me the article before you print it or publish it, so that if I need to check my PR and my legal, it's okay for this, that'd be fine. You're going to get at least 10 to 12 people who you can interview. Now you interview them. You have a script. You ask those questions. You write the article. You quote them. You check with them to make sure their quote is okay. I can guarantee you that if you can't figure out where to get that published, call me, because because getting it published is the least of your worries. Get it published. Send the link to the publication, whether it's an online post, whether it's a online newsletter, whatever it might be, back to those 10 or 12, maybe even to the 20 with the 8 that turned you down, and say, here it is, very cool, congrats, hope you like it, and I'd love to have a virtual coffee with you when it's convenient. Is next Thursday or Friday a good time? And then enjoy them thanking you, and talk a little, and that's the first time you talk a little bit about your aspiration. But I will tell you that this adds value to you 2 ways. One, they will remember you if there's an opening, and you're going to keep in touch with them, and they are in a position to ensure that you are on the slate. The second is, when you do get up to bat in any other job, bringing this up in conversation about the article that you've written, the publication that has taken place, and that is now on your resume, by the way, and the kind of networking skills that you've developed will put you at the top of the list competing for that job. I've probably talked about this to 50 people over the last few years. Maybe 20 of them actually did it. Every one of them got a job within 6 months. So I wanted to share that because I'm not a coach. I have very little patience for all this stuff. I love David and John and others who are, fully invested in being helpful. But this, to me, is one of the kinds of longer term ways of thinking about work that should stay with you when you are working. So that when, if a Maria, and I go to you, Maria, because I relate to the folks that I talk to on a day-to-day basis who head up talent acquisition, who head up human resources, and fundamentally, they know that there's a lot of things keeping them up at night that are brand new. Some of them are hitting them every day, and their leaders are coming down and saying, what do we do about this? And the first thing that you want to be able to do is call a couple people that might be a step ahead of you and say, what the hell are you doing about this? Should I get rid of this? Should I do this? What technology is out there using this? And if you don't have a network, you are just shooting in the dark. And fundamentally, this is not just true about human resources and talent acquisition. It's really true about every profession right now. We are in that kind of fast-paced change that you need, as part of your solution, you need peers who you can rely on calling you back and telling you that either you're a step ahead or a step behind or whatever it might be, so that you are armed to be able to do anything. I mean, that is, in fact, what I do for a living. Career Xroads has over 4,000 people talking to each other every month, and most of it is about, here's my situation, what do I do? Or I see your situation and here's something that I did that didn't work or does work. And it's really a very powerful way of engaging. I think young folks coming out of school increasingly are taking their entire class with them as part of their network. And my college, Stevens Institute of Technology, is investing significant money in how alumni engage one another to solve problems that are day-to-day in hundreds of different companies. And that's why it's a competence that I think increasingly will be part of how employers select you, is tell me about the strength of your network.
Oh, thank you very much. There's one more question posted, goes back again to job boards. Sharon is wondering if Career Builder is a good job board.
It was one of the bigger ones when Monster was around. Career Builder has been through a lot of change. They made the mistake of trying to buy too many different products, and so there's an awful lot of those. It still is out there, but I don't view it as a major player any longer.
They always had the best commercials with those chimpanzees.
Yeah, you know, and think about how long ago that was, 1999.
Wow.
That that Monster and Career Builder began spending millions of dollars on advertising for their products, which really changed the game. It used to be, for those of you old enough to recognize, it used to be that you, on Saturday morning, you would go out and buy the New York Times Sunday classified section, so that by noon you could mark up all of the jobs you wanted, put your resume in envelopes, mark the outside of the envelope with some kind of stupid code that the employer told you to put on the outside of the envelope, lick it, put stamps on, and get 40 of those into the mail on Saturday, so that by Tuesday at the latest, that employer would be getting your resume. How powerful was that? I would challenge anyone today to apply to 40 companies in one day. You would die first.
And the classified section is not what it used to be. It used to be a tremendous section in the Sunday Times.
In 2000, it peaked at 10. Sunday section of classifieds of the major papers in the United States was over $10 billion.
Wow.
And I used to work for a recruitment advertising firm. I would be making a huge amount. I'd look at a page in the New York Times and go, that's my page. Those are my companies that are advertising there, and they just spent tens of thousands of dollars to do that. And that totally shifted around 2001. It went from 10 billion to 5 billion. Today, it's less than $1 billion that companies pay to put ads in newspapers, and usually they're not major newspapers. They are small town newspapers for lower level help wanted kinds of jobs.
Hey, Gerry, I don't know if you remember, but also the Star Ledger used to have the same kind of situation, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. It used to be 6-7 inches thick on a Sunday. Whoever mentioned about,
at its peak, it was 120 pages.
Oh, okay. Well, whoever mentioned about Career Builder, again, I had experience with that. My experience is you're going to get a lot of phone calls from 22-year-olds at, the third level of recruiters. Gerry mentioned, they're going to be there for 3 months. They're not even going to be there 6 months. So just be aware.
This unfortunately, a lot of staffing firms hire kids right out of college, put them on commission with no salary. That's not everyone, but a significant number. So you can see how desperate they would be, and the only thing they learn is how to cold call and take rejection. Those are the two things they learn well. But unfortunately, they need to move on and find something else as well.
Gerry, before you go, I wondered if you could help us with something. There's been a lot of stuff on LinkedIn about ads wherever, but no salaries. What is the rationale for no salaries on the ads for the jobs?
Well, in my opinion, they're scams. I mean, why would you want to do that? It's like, if you're in college and you want an internship, there are still companies who basically say, yeah, here's an internship, work for nothing, Figure out how to move into the city and pay for yourself, etc. Hopefully your parents are covering you, and supposedly by the end of it you'll have learned something from us, but by and large it's a scam, and I'm not a fan of any of that. So LinkedIn does not have an ethical position about what to keep and what not until somebody complains, and then they'll start to do something about it. So I haven't seen that many of those. I've seen a number of scam, but they usually get pulled pretty quickly.
Okay. Thank you.
They do have a button on the jobs that states, are you interested in salary or salary requirements or something like that, which you can click yes.
Boy,
And whether or not they'll get back to you, I don't know.
Look, I'm a fan of the fact that salary should be the first thing that should be in every job description, number one. So I am not a fan of companies that say, oh, we're competitive or we're market priced or whatever. It's all bullshit. In Colorado passed a law that went into effect January 1st, which basically says that if you are posting a job anywhere in the country, in any job board, that would directly appeal to someone from Colorado, so obviously a remote job for the most part, remote job, you must legally put the compensation in. And the law is called equal pay for equal work. And it is an effective requirement, and Colorado can sue companies that don't do that. So what hundreds of companies are doing is posting jobs in Indeed and other places that say this is a remote job. Remember now, some of you, Dominic, for example, is looking for job descriptions that do say that. So it says remote job, and you will find at the bottom it says this is not applicable to Colorado.
Oh. Okay.
In other words, corporations, rather than telling you the truth, are doing a legal workaround by specifically excluding and discriminating against Coloradans, because it's not illegal to do so. I find it ethically ridiculous, and several of my members were doing that, obviously stupidly. And I personally called them and say, I'll give you your money back. You no longer can be a member, or stop this shit. This is just stupid. That's because I'm 74 years old and I don't give a shit about the money. I really care about the intensity of people's attitudes for how they treat others. And this was one of my least favorite things out there.
I do have one more question. A few days ago, LinkedIn had an article stating that employers are hiring really 45 and younger, putting it on them and really ignoring the 46 and older. What are your thoughts on that?
If you're asking me if there is age discrimination, yeah, there's a lot of it, but it is and will continue to be too subtle to be really eradicated. So that's number one, at least totally. The second part to this is 45 and younger starts to get you into the millennial generation, and there are, as of 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, something to that effect, millennials became the largest cohort in our workforce. And because of that, just if you look at the probabilities, you will be hiring more millennials than you will any other cohort, right? So it's not so much that they're hiring more, it's whether or not they're hiring proportionally more on purpose. You know, and that's really hard to prove, if you will. But you know, I think that there are still lots of value add for the kind of maturity and experience that those who are 46 and beyond can bring to the workforce. And it's kind of your challenge to be able to project that in a way that makes you competitive with somebody who's a few years younger. You know, obviously, it's not a perfect, we're not in a perfect world for sure, and we won't be for a long time. It's not just obviously age, but gender, race, ethnicity, any number of different things, including, you know, the state you're in. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, and there are other keywords as well, as they're looking for a vice president of operation with 3 to 4 years experience.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, how would you, you know, the kind of, if they really only need 3 to 4 years experience, you got to question, you know, what that job really is going to look like for sure.
Sure. And for those of you that are questioning, is age discrimination a factor in the way I'm job searching? You can also search for different types of companies. For instance, younger companies, startup companies, they need to hit the ground running to compete. And so may be willing to hire people with the experience, where the big companies, the names that we all know of, the ones we think we should be applying to, may not be the best place for us to look. So, you know, be open, be creative for the types of organizations that you're looking for. Don't just look for the big name companies. They're established already.
I agree. And a lot of the big name companies, you want to look at retention there. You want to look at, if you can, you know, because the point is, they may not be losing that many people who have been there for a number of years. The entry is where it's at. A company like Enterprise Rent-A-Car, for example, they only hire for one job. And the most likely candidate for that is someone who is right out of school.
Yeah.
And almost 100% of the openings that they have above that job are filled by the people who are in that job. And then they replace that job. They do hire people who are older. So it's not that they, you know, they would discriminate specifically, but fundamentally you need to know a profile of the company in terms of what comes open in that. And larger companies tend to eliminate people who are older from jobs that they're going to eliminate from the company.
Hmm. And, you know, companies can do that effectively. And the reason why is, as we move up the ladder, the senior jobs, there are less of them than there are lower level jobs. So, you know, if you have, you know, 50 people in lower level jobs, you might have 5 to 10 higher level jobs, and they're able to promote up more easily from their own workforce. So it's just the math. And it's not that they're being you know, deceptive or illegal in any way. They're just mining from their own talent, and so that certainly happens.
Internal mobility is a very big deal. So if you do have opportunities to go to a large company, you want to know how successful they are in terms of moving people internally so that they can stay long term, and upskilling and all that kind of stuff.
Well, Gerry, I want to thank you so much for this insight that you've shared with us. And I hope you have all heard some tremendous insight. Gerry has a tremendous amount of experience, research-based experience, and learned along the way. And I'm just so glad you're able to share some of those key topics and points with us. So thank you so much for that. It's very special for all of us.
My pleasure.
And glad that some of you were able to get your specific questions answered from Gerry in these topics. So thank you so much. Always a pleasure when I have the opportunity to hear you present or lead a conversation. Just before we wrap.
By the way, David, I just wanted to say I'm happy to be connected to any of you. If you connect to me on LinkedIn, just indicate that we're connecting from this. I appreciate that. And obviously, if you're in human resources or talent acquisition, I'm more than happy to get involved in a more direct way in terms of being helpful to you. So feel free to give me a call.
Terrific, thank you. I did just put Gerry's LinkedIn page address in the chat as well, so you can get it from there. And of course, in a little while, I will download the chat and post that on our website. We always post our information in the page called Meeting Presentation Documents. On the upper right portion of every web page is a link for Meeting Presentation Documents. So it will be there a little later. It's not there, of course, just yet. And in a little while, probably later today or tomorrow, we'll have the video available to you as well if you want to go back and review any of the discussion points. As we look forward to future programs that we have, we'll be right back here next week. And Gerry is not a coach, but we will have Coach Ken Scher will be here. Ken will be here next week to survive and thrive after a job loss when you're 50 plus or minus years old. So here we ended today with talking about the possibility of age discrimination, and Ken will be talking about ways to bypass or overcome that. And so that's what we'll be talking next week. That's August 6th, and August 13th we'll be back. Gary Landy will be here joining us again. He'll be talking about cover letters and thank you letters, the underutilized job search tools. So some people wonder if cover letters and thank you letters are indeed important. Gary will demonstrate why they are and how you can use them. So that's what's coming up over the next 2 weeks here. And as we look ahead to other groups that we're friendly with, the Breakfast Club of New Jersey meets every second Saturday of the month, so that's August 14th, thebreakfastclubnj.com, thebreakfastclubnj.com. Ed Hahn, recruiter Ed Hahn, will be talking about LinkedIn, how recruiters use it. I've heard this presentation before, and one of the topics he talks about are Boolean searches. So Gerry did mention Boolean searches a little earlier. There was a comment to me, people not sure what they are. So you can learn about that through that program as well. And our cousin organizations, of course, PSG of Central New Jersey, Mondays at 10:30, psgcnj.biz, and PSG of Morris County, Wednesdays at 9:30, psgmc.org. And of course, New Jersey Job Seekers meets virtually each Tuesday evening at 7:30 in the evening, and it's the same weekly link that they use, and I will post that again. I post it usually every week in our LinkedIn group. So that's all what's coming over the next couple of weeks. So once again, thank you very much to Gerry. So appreciative of you being here. Letting you know in just a moment, we will keep the session open, but turn the recording off, and so we can chit chat a little more with any of us that are around. And until we get to see each other soon, either virtually or in person, I will simply say, bye everybody.